Hello?
Bob Newhart is a comedy icon. His decades-long run of successes started in 1960 with the Grammy-winning stand-up album The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, and continued through two hugely successful TV shows in the 70s and 80s, The Bob Newhart Show and Newhart. More recently, Newhart appeared in the modern holiday classic film Elf and took home his first Emmy in 2013 for a guest shot on The Big Bang Theory. I recently chatted with Bob ahead of his appearance at the Orpheum Theater as part of the first ever Minneapolis Comedy Festival. You've been making people laugh professionally for around 60 years.
That's right.
And I'm curious, what goes through your mind when you get those first few laughs each night when you're in front of an audience?
I mean, I get people write in. They say, people think I'm funny, and I want to be a stand-up comic. And invariably, my advice to them is, whenever you get a chance to do it, because there's no place else to learn it. There's no book that's going to tell you how to do it. You have to do it in front of an audience and find out why it worked and why it didn't work. So when I go out on the stage, I have probably 4 or 5 different what I would call signposts that kind of tell me what an audience is like, and that's just something you learn by doing it. You say, okay, I know this kind of audience. I'm going to have to slow it down a little bit and take more time, and then you say, oh, this audience, they're hip, okay. They're like almost ahead of you. So you work differently to different audiences, and in my case, I did it backwards. I had a hit comedy album, and then I had to learn the craft of stand-up from the top. Not from. I mean, the traditional story is you work clubs, and then you work better clubs, and then you work better clubs, and you put in 20 years, and so I had to kind of learn it backwards. I had to learn the craft of stand-up, and the art of stand-up to me is when you've done something maybe 1,000 times, but it's something the audience wants to hear, and you, from your years of experience, you say, oh, okay, this is a Sir Walter Raleigh audience, and that's the art of it. You've done it maybe 1,000 times, maybe 10,000 times, but then you have a responsibility to do it as well as you possibly can do it. You have to try to make it appear that it's the first time you're doing it. That's what I call the art of doing, of stand-up.
I'm curious, does getting a laugh now feel any different than it did 60 years ago?
Well, I had an experience, and I was doing the Bob Newhart show, the television show, with Suzanne, and we had this wonderful written piece of material that I couldn't wait to do, and the laugh really was Susie's to get. It wasn't mine, and she timed it perfect. But it probably took maybe 3 minutes before you build up to the payoff line, and I don't feel that today. I feel like there's a real pressure of bang, 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 bang. I don't know that you can take the kind of time we used to take in the 70s. I found that in Big Bang Theory that it was bang, 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 bang. The audience is different. They want it faster.
And you have such a distinct comedic voice and style. I'm wondering, have you had to reshape or redevelop that style with changing audiences and shorter attention spans over the course of your career?
I hate to think about it. I don't know. It's a good question. Would it still work? Well, I have some indications because they still played the first album, and it still seems to work. So that's an indication that it would work. The other indication would be that you'd have to speed it up more than you did then. So it would be different. And again, I stress that the only way to learn it is on stage. You can't learn it somewhere else. Like every other comedian, I've died. I mean, I've gone out and nothing. You could hear the air conditioning. But that's part of it. And that okay, it is like a boxer. If you're in a boxing match, you're going to get hit. Okay,
right.
That's a given. So that's what you go in doing. You're okay. And there are going to be nights when the audience you're not there. They're kind of comic, and you're going to I don't know any comedian I've ever talked to that hasn't had at least one, if not a couple hundred times in his career, just of it not working, and you have to accept that.
You talked a little bit about the beginning of your career and the sort of the way that you sort of came at it, having a hit record first and then developing your act more after that. But your comedic voice is so distinct. Did you try any other approaches in terms of how you presented yourself, even after your successes, or did you pretty much stick to what was working for you from that very first album?
Well, it kind of parts of both. Your style is kind of an example of the way you look at life. So that was always there. I was influenced, for instance, when I was first starting out, certainly Jack Benny, not because of the timing. I've been compared to Jack, but I don't think you can teach timing. I think if I'm compared to Jack, it's because I'm not afraid of taking the time. That Jack was he was one of the bravest comedians I've ever seen, because he took the time. He didn't panic. He took the time to tell the joke because he knew that it was going to work. It was going to pay off, and very much influenced by Bob and Ray, because I started out as a part of a comedy team, and we were very much influenced by Bob and Ray and their style, their delivery of these weird events, and them treating them as they were the most, like they used to do. Bob would come into town, and Ray Goulding. Bob would ask him, "What are you doing in town?" And he would say, "I'm in town for the slow talkers convention." and they would go back and forth as though it was perfectly normal to belong to a slow talking, inviting slow talkers from all over the country to meet for their convention. I remember I did a thing. I just happened to run across it the other day. I was looking for something else, and I ran across a show I did with Johnny Carson, and it was a routine about a guy who had been picked up by aliens, by a UFO, and he had been taken to Mars and spent almost a month on Mars. And then they brought him back and deposited him back on Earth, and so the CIA and the FBI wanted to know what it was like. And one of the questions they had was, would you say the Martian civilization is more advanced than, say, our civilization? And he said, oh, yes, definitely. And then they would say, well, by how much would you say they're more advanced than we are? He said, I would say 6 weeks. and that's one of the signposts I use to determine the audience, because it's dangerous, because sometimes it works and other times it doesn't work. It just so. But again, to get back on Bob and Ray, they're very much an influence on the way I look at life. Yeah.
My understanding is that Minneapolis was one of the first spots in the country where you had sort of seen a spike in your success once you were starting out. Is that true?
Oh yeah, that's definitely true. I got this recording contract with Warner Brothers Records, and they wanted to record a comedy album, and so I made that, and I think it was February of 1960. And I was waiting for the album to come out, and it was like, I would think maybe April of 1960. So I finally called up Warner Brothers, and I said, whatever happened to my album? I made that comedy album, and I haven't heard anything about it, because friends of mine were saying, what happened to that album you made? And I talked to someone at Warner Brothers, and they said, well, it's going crazy in Minneapolis. There are 2 disc jockeys there, Howard Vikens one, and they mentioned another guy, and he said they just play it all the time. In fact, as a matter of fact, in the papers, the newspapers, they put in the driving instructor will be on at 5:30, and again at 8:30, and you can hear the submarine commander at noon, and again at 3:45, and they said every pressing, we weren't prepared for this, and every pressing we make, we send immediately to Minneapolis. So yes, it was very definitely the first indication that maybe the album was going to be well received.
You mentioned just a few minutes ago the Bob Newhart show with Suzanne Plachette, and I have to ask you about the finale of your hugely successful second series, Newhart, which is regarded by many folks as the best TV finale of all time, with, of course, the twist dream ending. And I'm so curious, what was going through your mind as you and Suzanne Plachette were sitting in the dark in the bed there, waiting for the lights to come up in front of the studio audience, knowing you had this surprise for them?
Well, we were anxious. It actually was my wife's idea. She came up with the idea. It was in the 6th year of Newhart. And I was thinking of leaving the show at the end of 6 years, because I felt CBS was kind of treating us poorly. I thought we had made Monday night at 9 o'clock a hit time slot for CBS, and they were putting other shows in our place. And so I mentioned that to my wife, that I said, I think this was going to be the last year. And without a beat, she said, well, you should end the show on a dream sequence, because there were so many inexplicable things, not the least of which was Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. And I said, oh, that's a great idea. And we happened to be at a Christmas party, and Susie was there, and we told her the story, and she said, if I'm in Timbuktu, I'll fly in for it, She loved the idea. And so, well, anyway, I settled the problems I had with CBS. We did 2 more years, and we ended it after 8 years. And I gave the idea to the writers, and they fleshed it out. And there was apprehension, because is this going to work, or are they just going to stare at us? And the indication that it was going to work was, Susie and I were in bed, but there was what they call a floater in front of the next scene, they pull the floater away, and director Dick Martin yelled action, and the people recognized it was a bedroom scene from the Bob Newhart show, and they started applauding, and that was the first indication that we were onto something. It was going to work.
Honey. Honey, wake up. You won't believe the dream I just had. What? But don't you want to hear about it?
All right, Bob. What is it?
Well, I was an innkeeper in this crazy little town in Vermont.
I'm happy for you. Good night.
Nothing made sense in this place. I mean, the maid was an heiress. Her husband talked in alliteration. The handyman kept missing the point of things. And then there were these 3 woodsmen, but only one of them talked.
That settles it. No more Japanese food before you go to bed.
I just watched it again today, and it makes me smile again every time after all these years.
Well, it's kind of a trust of the audience, at least my audience and the audience for the show, that to me it was like kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, nudge. You see what we're doing, and they go, "Oh yeah, okay, we see what you're doing. Okay, yeah, go ahead. That's great." It was a faith in our audience, and that we trusted them that much. I think that's what they loved about it, that we trusted them, and they would know what we were doing, and they reacted in kind.
One of my favorites is the movie Elf, which you're a part of. It's a new holiday classic. I'm curious if you can recall for me anything that stands out about the experience of being in that film.
Well, when I first read it, I wanted to do it because I felt that what finally happened, and I said to myself, this is a perennial. This is going to be on every year at Christmas time. This is going to be along with A Miracle on 34th Street, and it has been. It just had that wonderful feeling that reinforced. There is. Yeah, life is good. Yeah, right. and people are good, and they have this feeling, and they have this power to join in song and give energy to the sleigh and Santa Claus, Ed Asner. I loved it when I read it, and then I worked with Will, who I think he was marvelous in it. He doesn't get a lot of credit for his acting, but that was again it was a gamble, because people could have said that's the dumbest movie I've ever seen. That
Right.
Doesn't this guy realize that he's not an elf?
Right.
But he pulled it off. It was a great piece of acting, I thought.
You've had such a wonderful and long career in show business. I'm sure that you've seen and heard and done it all in that time. And I just have to ask: do you have a favorite show business story that you can think of off the top of your head after all of your years of entertaining?
I mentioned that show with Suzanne. We did a lot of shows that I think were unique. I think we did one of the first gay shows where Howard Hessman, who later wound up on CBS or whatever that was.
WKRP, sure.
KRP. That's
Right, yeah.
KRP in Cincinnati. He came in with the group with Mr. Jack Riley, who was Mr. Carlin, and Mr. Peterson, and Florida Freebus and Rini, and I said, this is a new member of the group, and I said, and I asked him, Mr. Plager, I think it was Mr. Plager, why don't you tell us about yourself? And he said, well, right now, he said, I'm having a domestic problem, and that's one of the reasons I'm in the group. And, I wanted to go on vacation to Spain, but my partner, Ralph, he wants to go to Germany.
Right.
And of course, Mr. Carlin, and automatically rubbing a person in the wrong way, said, "Hey, wait a minute. What's going on here?" And then I said, "Well, he's going to join our group." And they said, so the next session we had, they said we had a meeting and we want to throw him out. And then I kind of read the riot act to him and said, "Hey, you have to accept people." So I think that was an important step, and I think it was one of the first, if not the first, treatment of the gay lifestyle.
Well, it's certainly that show was certainly revolutionary in some very subtle ways.
Very quiet way.
Right. And I have to say, truthfully too, as growing up watching the show and watching reruns of the show, one of my favorite things that always brought a smile to my face and made me laugh was seeing your character get sort of slowly agitated by all the craziness around you. It's one of the great comedic things to watch. So enjoyable.
There was another show that I was very proud of. I was treating a patient, and he was in an insurance business, and he was African American. And he had that Djibouti, I think it's called. I'm not sure, but the African dress on. And he was coming to me, and he said, I sell insurance, but and he had a dog with him, a big black Great Dane that he named Whitey. And so I explained to him what maybe if he dressed down a little bit, if he didn't mind, that maybe he would be more successful selling insurance policies and not maybe he was intimidating people. And so we end the session, and he asked me, he said, do you have one of those vending machines? I said, yeah. So he takes Whitey. He said, yeah, because Whitey hasn't eaten all day. And with that, they go down to the vending machine, and Jerry, the dentist, comes over to. He's talking to me about something involving the office, and then he comes back from vending machine with Whitey, and he says, "Sit, Whitey," and with that, Peter Bonner's sat immediately. And it got a big laugh because it was kind of released attention, and I think that's what comedy does. I think that's one of the. I mean, after 60 years, I think our role is kind of to relieve tension, to help people get over a certain time. And the ability to laugh at ourselves and say, yeah, that's really kind of dumb, So again, another show that I was very proud of.
We're very much looking forward to having you performing here in Minneapolis coming up this week. And I just have to say, on a personal level, I'm so grateful that I got to be on the other end of the line with the man who made an art out of phone conversations. Truly, it's a big thrill for me, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Scott. I enjoyed it.